Okay, everyone, welcome to another episode of DealBox Daily. Today, I'm joined by Kris Hulbert, the founder and CEO of Gratwick Productions, live on episode 24 of DealBox Daily. Kris, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, John. Thanks for having me. We're so happy with what you guys have done for us so far and can't thank you enough.
Oh, well, it's our pleasure to have you on the show here today, and our audience is really looking forward to hearing a little bit about your business. So before we get into Gratwick itself, the company, its vision, we'll spend some time talking about the business model, how you came up with these ideas, what the investment opportunity kind of looks like for people who are interested in following along with the business. But maybe share a little bit about your background and your story with the audience so that they can get to know you. What was life like for you before Gratwick?
Oh man, that's a complicated question. I'm going to try and keep it short, but ultimately, kind of storytelling was always something that circulated around me. And I grew up in Western New York. It wasn't really exposed to a lot of opportunities here, but once I made the jump and moved to Los Angeles, I really found filmmaking and storytelling as an opportunity and a purpose in life, something that was really missing from me. And thanks to the 2008 writer's strike, we had a couple years to kind of get our feet underneath us and got our first film made. It was a small little horror film called The Perfect House. We were just trying to make something at the time. We hired a good DP so the movie would look good. We got a couple stars from the mid 80s. And really, it was supposed to be a learning experience, but it came out far better than we expected it to. And they tossed us into the deep end. We end up coming back to Los Angeles because we shot the film out here in Buffalo, and a lot of distributors were interested. They wanted it. A fairly large, actually one of the largest horror distributors out there, wanted to take the film, wanted to take it to market and all of that. But they kind of offered me the proverbial deal with the devil. They told me straight up they wanted me to sell out my family and friends, give them the movie for free. I'd go on to make other movies and make my money there. And everybody else would take the hit and write it off as a tax loss because, as they said, they invested in a first-time filmmaker, so they should expect to lose money. And that just really wasn't an acceptable proposition for me. So we turned them down, and we went to seek our own path of distribution. Probably a little too far ahead of the curve and a little too far ahead of the technology, but I kind of think everything happens for a reason. So we ultimately found Facebook at the time was doing video on demand test. They had just finished the Dark Knight test on Facebook. So we assumed a video on demand platform was coming, and we drove right up to Facebook, walked through the front doors, and ultimately got lucky, an introduction to somebody that was a subsidiary of Facebook called Flick Launch at the time. And we made a deal with them for our film to be the first movie ever to be released on Facebook. And we thought our ship had come in. We had a cover story on the front page of Variety magazine mentioning us with Facebook, and we expected the phone to start ringing and all of these things. But we made a deal with them for the movie to release on October 1st, 2011. And to promote this movie, we sold all of our belongings. We got an RV, and we ended up going around the country on a 12,000-mile bus tour doing pop-up screenings. We did screenings on hilltops, strip clubs, basements, bars, anyone that would let us pop up a screen for a day, show the movie. We collected gas money donations, and we kept going. The goal was to make it from Los Angeles all the way down the southern border, all the way up the East Coast and back to Buffalo for the Countdown to Midnight premiere. And everything worked great. We were shaking hands, we were meeting people, and it was amazing how many people across the country just wanted to see artists go for it. So many people came and told us, well, I don't really like horror movies, but I love what you guys are trying to do. I love that you're kind of carving your own path. We support this. And a lot of grassroots shaking hands, kissing babies, all of that type of stuff. And we got back to Buffalo, did a whole party with our family, Countdown to Midnight. It was going to release on Facebook. And at the exact same moment that the movie came out, Facebook switched over to the timeline that they use today, and the pay button didn't work. So for 2 weeks, the movie was dead in the water. Nobody could click the pay button. The big tech company failed the little filmmaker guy, and all of our grassroots kind of publicity and attention and buzz wore off over the 2-week period. And it really left us high and dry. We had to crawl back to some smaller distributors and get the film out there. So it was a crash course in distribution, marketing, social media, way ahead before people started generating audiences and followings and all of that stuff. And the takeaway from all of it was the idea worked, the to make it up as we went along, kind of marketing tactics all worked, and we got failed by the third-party ecosystem. We got failed by the distributors that were kind of wanted to be predatory to our family, and then we got screwed over by the failure of the technology that we were just a little too far ahead of. So that's kind of when we went back into the lab and really realized that if we had planned all of this properly and from beginning to end, each stage had built off the previous one, that the business model was sound and worked properly. We just needed to legitimize ourselves and get the whole thing planned out properly, structured properly, and build an ecosystem that was prepared to execute this type of idea and concept from the start.
What a story. Wow. I can only imagine what it's like, on a 12,000-mile road show, right? As you're going across screening movies, seeing it all every single night, right? What an adventure. So it sounds to me like Gratwick was basically born out of experience in the way that you went about doing these things. And correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm sure the audience would love to hear a little bit more about this, but it's my understanding that Gratwick exists today to basically eliminate a lot of the confusion and the challenges around like these regional filmmaking ideas, right? And then also how to produce and push that content out. So knowing that Gratwick was born out of your own experience on this roadshow for this film, maybe tell the audience a little bit more directly about Gratwick today. Let's hear about the vision behind the company and what it serves to do.
Oh, absolutely. So the overall takeaway from that entire experience was we knew that we could make films. We knew that we were storytellers. We knew we had the ability to do that. But unless we controlled the ecosystem, the financing, the funding, the distribution, and the marketing, we were at the mercy of third-party companies, the establishment. It just, I couldn't go back to my family and friends and other investors and people I've never met and ask them to put money into another film that I couldn't control their process to getting paid back. We had to build a new ecosystem that allowed us to facilitate that in an efficient and ethical manner that really was just all about the kind of studio system I want to work with as a filmmaker. And when we started putting that together, it just became obvious that we might as well build it big enough that it can serve other filmmakers and artists and creators in general, because we all need the same thing. We all just want to make our projects, have creative control over it, and know that anyone that believes in us and invests in our creative work has a reasonable expectation of getting paid back in a professional sense. And there's a lot of inefficiencies in the way entertainment distribution is done in this day and age. I mean, we're just going to call it inefficiencies, but it goes a lot deeper and darker than that. And it was a lot easier to clean up with the technologies that started emerging. Blockchain, cryptocurrency, automated distribution, streaming has become far more widely adapted. And we're right on the cusp of being able to give investors, producers, artists, and creators in general royalties on the front end of their projects, where at the point of sale, that can all be automated and distributed through smart contracts, where people don't have to wait 3 months, 6 months and chase down the person before them in the revenue waterfall. They can know that there's an algorithm that's going to distribute all of that stuff right at the point of sale. And I think that's going to completely revolutionize and open up the doors of access to the entertainment industry when that fully takes hold.
Yeah, that's very exciting. Obviously, there's been a lot of noise, right, and scandal in the music industry around some of these same problems, right? So it proliferates all the way through every aspect of the entertainment world at large, right?
Absolutely.
And it sounds like your guys' application is more so obviously in the film industry, right? But again, enabling these content producers, these artists, these creative people to have full possession over every element of the, let's call it supply chain or production chain, if you will, of the content that they produce, which is really exciting, right? It's power to the players, right? Like the old school GameStop,
yes.
Slogan. Yeah, very cool.
Well, the music industry is a great example, because we're not going to just limit ourselves to filmmaking. That's where my storytelling and creative interests lie. But the ecosystem can be applied across the board. We're really looking to support any kind of digital content that can be distributed over the internet, whether it's VR experiences, video games, music, movies, episodic content. All of that stuff will be facilitated through the Gratwick umbrella, and soon our digital marketplace on the back end of all of that.
Very cool. Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the marketplace. So we had lunch together a few months ago, and I distinctly remember you sharing some of the other businesses that have tried to address this market in the past. So without calling them out or naming names, talk to us a little bit about what makes Gratwick different than the other solutions that are either available today or people are looking to bring to the market in the future.
I think the biggest one is authenticity. We're not repackaged studio executives looking to take advantage of the current trends and buzzes. We legitimately want a studio model that exists in an efficient and ethical manner, but is also autonomous. So each creator is kind of their own studio head when the project's going through the pipeline. And I don't think there's anything out there right now that truly is committed to the authenticity side of that, but also the transparency side of that. Every single part of our process, we want to be part of the story, to be an additional story that we're telling as all of these things go along. Whether it's a live stream movie production or a live stream recording session or a live stream CGI and motion capture session, we want investors, fans, audiences to partake in that entire journey. And a lot of that also creates a system of checks and balances that keeps us accountable to our own commitments and also allows the audience to partake on what's happening and what's going on. So for example, with productions, we want to do live stream casting calls, allow the audience to watch the process, allow the actors that are auditioning to have a lot more exposure than they otherwise would have. For a lot of actors, auditioning is the only exposure they're ever going to get. And for more people to be able to see that and become fans of them and have access to follow their careers, or maybe identify and see them for a role for their project that they otherwise wouldn't have known about, it's a great opportunity for content and extra leverage on exposure. But at the same time, it's real hard to run a casting couch if you've got 10,000, 20,000, 100,000 people watching on a live stream of the audition process. You're going to conduct yourself more professionally with the actors in the room, and everybody's safer and has a much more valuable experience from the process. And that's kind of what we're looking to implement from beginning to end at each stage.
Yeah, it's really interesting being able to have, like you said, kind of this streaming auditions for the actors themselves. I was actually speaking to a famous actor who everybody in the audience would know, but I won't say who. And he was telling me recently that a lot of his auditions have been taking place via Zoom recently, and he hasn't had to travel around the country to do all of this stuff. And it's enabled him a whole lot more flexibility in his life. So he's able to spend more time with his family. It makes the audition process a lot less stressful. So in a lot of ways, obviously, this was the result of the pandemic, but your business was positioned for that prior to, these global lockdowns and this whole digital world that's now proliferating in the way of these types of things. So it's really cool in that Gratwick, in a sense, the market has come to you, even though
Yes.
you were already thinking about doing these things, which is a great position to be in, right? You're not backing and filling, trying to figure out, hey, how do we adapt to this changing landscape? You're already positioned for it.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head with that. There was a educational process that had to take place too. We didn't know what we didn't know. So even though we were ahead of the curve with our concepts and our ideas, we still had a growth period to know how to execute that property, how to build a corporation, establish the structure, to handle all of the leadership responsibilities that came with that. So it was frustrating all these years building and putting all of this together, but it was a necessary growth phase as we waited for that window to open up and to watch kind of the reckoning that's come to Hollywood, both on and off camera in a lot of different ways. It's so satisfying to kind of see everything coming around to what we've been talking about this entire time. Well, years ago, when we first started going through this whole process, we talked about the casting couch. We talked about Harvey Weinstein. We talked about all of those things, and people did not want to hear it at all. They just wanted sunshine and roses. Don't tell us the dirty details of what needs to be fixed. So we just went to work fixing it. And I'm so glad to see people realize and understand why that solution needs to exist, and that there's a better way that we can do these things without preying on our own talent to do it.
It's so refreshing to hear that in today's day and age, especially as, more and more curtains get pulled back, right? Not just in Hollywood, but in every single industry, right? It's happening. It's a global phenomenon. So I want to switch gears a little bit. One of the things I love about this business is the social impact element of this. A lot of investors today, a lot of people who are looking to just do general business with folks, they're more and more concerned about things like ESG and social impact, right? This is buzzing around the internet like nobody's business, and it's a trend that's not going away. It's something that actually I shared with the audience on episode 15 of this show, was speaking about how you address these social impact and these ESG elements and how important they are, not just in the people you do business with, but also the investments that you make. So talk to us a little bit about the social impact side of the business and how you think the content creators, the artists, will react to this type of medium.
There's a couple layers to it, but the most important layer to the whole thing is by using a much more efficient model, we can still give back to the communities where the artists come from that we're looking to support. And we can do it in a way where everybody's still making more money than they would through a traditional model, but also giving back and supporting the communities at the same time. The goal is to have artists commit up to 5% of their revenue and profits to the community or a nonprofit organization chosen by the community, the shareholders, the audience, and then Gratwick matches that 5%. So ideally up to 10% of all revenue can go back to the community to support a great cause. And ideally each project is going to support a different cause and a more local cause that has direct impact on the community where the artists are coming from. And through that, I think we can make an impact in a small way and a large way for the artists, the community, and ultimately by saving the artists a large percentage that would go to the Googles, the iTunes, the Amazons, the 30% where they're offering nothing to the artist for the right to sell their product through their pipeline. Our goal is to drop that down to 10% and still offer marketing and distribution all through that. That extra 20% that's saved, if both the company and the artist combine to donate 10% of that to the community, to a nonprofit organization, we're still coming out ahead of the game where we would be going through the third-party gateways that exist in today's market.
That's a great answer, and it's wonderful to see that, again, that social impact side, especially in the impact that, like you said, could be small in a regional geography, right? Like a small town in the Midwest, for example, but while it's small in the global grand scheme of things, it does have a tremendous impact on that local community, right? So in my eyes, right, philanthropy and charity, there is no such thing as small. It's about doing the act itself, right? It's not about the overall impact it really has. It's just about shifting that mindset into doing good business for the communities that you have an impact on. So that's wonderful to hear. So you spoke a little bit about, the philanthropic side of the business, the charitable side of the business, but when it comes to the investment side, let's get into the investments now. So for those out in the audience that are listening or considering, joining Gratwick Productions on their investment journey, talk a little bit to us about, the go-to-market strategy, the revenue goals that the business has. What is really the investment opportunity for people looking to participate with Gratwick?
Sure. So the biggest obstacle in investing in digital content creation and all content creation in general is the production cost. That's where the primary risk is. That's where they tell you it's a numbers game. You got to invest in large slates of projects to see a good return on that. Where we're trying to mitigate that risk is by creating revenue streams and additional content that's created through the entire production process. By live streaming the production, by live streaming the auditions, creative meetings, involving the community in right from the start with the project selection process, we're creating opportunities not only for sponsorships, but also for pre-sales, advertising that generates revenue instead of an expense. And we're trying to create a ecosystem that allows us to, at the very least, break even on the project production cost by the time the project's completed and releases to market. So at the end of the day, when the project hits the market, you're already ideally looking at revenue and profitable revenue at that, but you also end up with anywhere from dozens to hundreds of hours of additional content that already generated revenue through the process, but then can be recycled, edited into episodic content, edited into documentaries, edited into promotional and marketing material, and then licensed back out to the market the same as you would the actual product that you made. So the traditional standard model, it's usually a 2-year cycle from the day of funding all the way till the year after it's released before anyone starts seeing a break-even dollar coming back. Whereas we're looking to shorten that into a 9 to 12 month period. So by the time the production wraps up, everybody's been paid back and we're at even. And now we can all celebrate and go to market together and enjoy the revenue share of whatever the project does in the market. Some are going to succeed, some are going to do home runs, some are going to come up short, but by building in that additional safety net, it allows the ecosystem to continually sustain itself and to continually fund additional projects that give us that opportunity to step up the plate a number of times, to create a slate of projects that we don't have to worry about if they all go belly up, or is the company going to go belly up? Because our core focus is that experience that we're offering to our investors and our artists, and putting a monetization process in through that stage that gets everybody in a much more friendly and financially sound position than they would otherwise be on taking a risk on a single project, which is usually what ends up happening with independent filmmakers. They're not able to package a slate of projects together. They've got one film, they're looking to get it out there in the market. And if that film fails, their friends, their family, everybody that invested in them, they lose their investment, and they probably don't have a chance to make another project. So if we can fix that core flaw in the investment system, I think it's can change the game for everybody in the long run.
Yeah, and I'm really glad you brought up kind of like the diversification, if you will, nature of the platform itself. I've taken a look at investing personally in some film projects before, and what I've learned about that experience is that it is a very hands-on, one-of-one kind of approach. So your conviction has to be absolutely ridiculous to think about investing in these projects. And the economics of the film business at large, it's such a small margin business that it becomes really challenging to actually generate meaningful ROI on these investments. So by having an investment opportunity to invest in a platform like Gratwick that has multiple opportunities to generate revenue, not just a single film, it creates more of, like you said, a safety net for those folks to be able to get exposure to an industry that has incredible barriers to entry, right? Can be very risky and speculative, but the ones that do win, like you said, those successes, those home runs are things that people want exposure to. And quite frankly, for me personally, as an investor, I look at this as a wonderful opportunity to, like I said, get exposure to a sector, an asset class that has been previously completely inaccessible. And it's something that I don't personally have exposure in. So when I look at this business, it becomes really interesting from an ability to, again, allocate to something that has been previously inaccessible and do so in a diversified way, which I think is a really unique value proposition for anybody who's considering investing in the film industry at large.
Well, we've got plans to scale this upwards, to set regional studio systems that allow the community to invest and support their local artists and keep them in those communities and build and finance their projects in their hometowns. Our ultimate goal is to both undercut Hollywood's access to talent by giving people the infrastructure and the support they need in their hometown, and then undercut them on the marketplace as well, because they're fat on the hog, to be honest with you. That 30% that they're charging on the back end is far too much, simply because there's no other competition. There's nobody else in the market to really go to in that side. So if we can get that down to 10%, the talent can now succeed in their hometowns. The communities can benefit off of seeing more productions and more work in their communities. And they can also keep their talent there. And everybody wins through the process of doing it this way. And that's where stage 2 of this comes from. Stage 1 right now, this particular offering we're talking about is all about establishing and executing a prototype of this model to show people what they can expect, to show people how it works, and to generate those numbers that we can build off of. But stage 2 is really setting up these localized media funds that support and drive the creators in their hometowns. And then our entire parent umbrella would provide the marketing, distribution, and pipeline for each of these projects to move through once the communities have funded, financed, and chosen which creators they're supporting in their regions.
Yeah, it's all very exciting. I mean, I think we've spanned the entire gambit here today in this discussion. So with that, Kris, I mean, as we start to wind down today's episode, how can our audience go about getting in touch with you or learning more about Gratwick? Obviously, you can head on over to dlbx.io and check out the Gratwick offering and all of their information on the Dealbox marketplace today. So please go ahead and do that following your participation in today's recording. But Kris, let our audience know how they can get in touch with you, how they can learn more about Gratwick.
Sure. We've got the general social medias. almost all of them, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, are all at Gratwick Productions. But really, the best way to get in touch with us and talk to us directly is to join our Discord community. It's Gratwick Productions Discord community. It's a very small, intimate people that have been supporting us from the beginning. People that have kind of stumbled across what we've been doing. We've been telling the tale all along with how this has been happening, the stages of where we're going. It never happens as quickly as we're hoping, but it's been great to see the support and be able to have the conversation with everybody that understands what we're trying to do, and that it's not something that's just going to happen overnight. And they've stayed loyal to us and followed along. So we've got young creators in there. A 14-year-old kid that wants to get into screenwriting and editing just jumped in the other day. And this is really what we're trying to build, is an ecosystem of community collaboration with all of this stuff. So while the Discord server is serving as our kind of alpha model for a community, a private community social network, ultimately we plan on building our own app and platform where all of this stuff will exist within there. It's a great starting point to just have that conversation with people, talk one-on-one, stay grounded with other artists and creators, and let them know that we're storytellers ourselves. We're not just some corporate suits trying to build another model that takes advantage of the artists. We're trying to build a safe haven that we want to work with, and as many artists come along and chip in and support that and collaborate with us, the faster and the bigger it's going to grow. So Discord's where we would really suggest people jump in and hang out with us.
Terrific. That's so great. We're glad to hear that you have all of those mediums available to anybody who's interested in engaging with Gratwick. So want to thank everybody for making the time here and joining us on another episode of Dealbox Daily for episode 24. Our guest again, Kris Hulbert from Gratwick Productions. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us, and thank you for everything you guys have done to get us to this point.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. Thanks so much, Kris.